Some people live with a quiet belief they rarely say out loud. No matter what I do, it's still not enough. This video is about people who always feel not good enough, not because they lack ability, but because something inside them never lets them arrive. You might recognize it instantly. You double-check a simple message before sending it. Someone praises your work, and instead of relief, you feel exposed. At the end of the day, when everything is finally quiet, your mind starts replaying what you missed, what you could have done better, what might cost you later. Outwardly, your life looks fine. You function, you show up, you achieve. People might even admire you. But internally, there's a constant tension, a sense of being slightly behind, slightly flawed, slightly at risk. As if your value is conditional, as if one mistake could undo everything. This isn't loud insecurity. It's not attention-seeking. It's a private, disciplined kind of self-doubt. You don't talk about it because it sounds unreasonable. You have proof that you're doing okay, so you tell yourself to stop complaining, to push harder, to do more. Yet the feeling remains. If this sounds familiar, you're not broken, and you're not alone. You're touching a psychological pattern that runs far deeper than confidence. At first, feeling not good enough seems like a passing emotion, a bad day, a mistake, a moment of comparison. But for some people, it doesn't pass. Over time, it stops being a feeling and becomes a belief, a quiet conclusion about who you are. Not I did something wrong, but there is something wrong with me. This is the difference most people miss. When not good enough is just a feeling, it responds to reassurance. You get feedback, you rest, you move on. But when it becomes a belief, no amount of success can reach it. You can achieve more, work harder, improve yourself endlessly, and still feel fundamentally behind. Still feel like you're borrowing your place in the world. Still feel like your value is temporary, fragile, and dependent on constant performance. This belief doesn't shout. It whispers. It shows up as an internal rule you live by. I have to earn my place. I can't afford to relax. If I stop trying, everything falls apart. And because this belief lives so deep, you rarely question it. It feels like realism, like humility, like being responsible. But it isn't. It's a lens, one that quietly filters your entire life. Success becomes pressure. Praise becomes suspicion. Rest becomes guilt. You don't experience life as it is. You experience it through the constant effort to prove that you deserve to be here. Understanding this shift, from emotion to identity, is crucial, because you cannot heal what you keep treating as a personality flaw. And once you see this belief for what it is, something changes. You stop trying to fix yourself and start asking where this belief came from. To understand why the feeling of not being good enough cuts so deeply, we need to make an important distinction. One psychology often makes, but everyday life rarely does. There is a difference between guilt and shame. Guilt says, I did something wrong. It focuses on behavior. It allows repair. You apologize, you adjust, you move forward. Shame says, I am something wrong. It doesn't point to a mistake. It points to identity. When someone lives with chronic shame, failure isn't an event, it's a verdict. A missed deadline isn't just an error, it becomes proof. A small misunderstanding isn't just awkward, it becomes confirmation. Confirmation that something about you is fundamentally flawed. This is what people mean when they talk about toxic shame. And it's important to understand something else. Shame is not just a thought, it is a felt experience in the body. It tightens the chest, it pulls the shoulders inward. It creates the urge to hide, to shrink, to disappear, even when no one is attacking you. That's why logic doesn't dissolve it. You can tell yourself, I'm being irrational. You can list your accomplishments. You can point to evidence that you're competent and valued. But shame doesn't respond to facts, because it wasn't created by facts. It was formed in moments where being seen felt unsafe, where mistakes felt costly, where approval could be withdrawn. Over time, your nervous system learned a simple rule: visibility equals danger. So instead of asking, "What did I do wrong?" your mind jumps straight to, "What's wrong with me?" This is the identity wound at the center of feeling not good enough. And until it's named, it quietly shapes how you work, how you love, and how you see yourself, even in moments when nothing is actually wrong. If you've ever wondered why compliments seem to slide off you, while criticism stays for days or even years, this is where the answer lives. Inside the mind of someone who feels not good enough, there is a constant voice we often call the inner critic. But this voice isn't random, and it isn't there because you're weak. It formed for a reason. At some point, your brain learned that being harsh with yourself was safer than being caught off guard. If you criticized yourself first, mistakes hurt less. If you expected rejection, it didn't shock you when it came. So the inner critic became a kind of internal surveillance system, always scanning for threats. Here's where the betrayal happens. Your brain begins to filter reality. When someone praises you, it dismisses it. They're just being polite. They don't really know me. But when someone points out a flaw, even gently, your brain locks onto it. There it is, proof. This isn't because negative feedback is more accurate. It's because your brain is wired to protect what feels familiar. Psychologists call this confirmation bias, the tendency to search for evidence that supports what you already believe. And if your core belief is, "I'm not enough," your mind will organize reality to keep that belief intact. Why? Because uncertainty feels more dangerous than pain you recognize. So instead of updating the belief, the brain reinforces it. Success becomes pressure, praise becomes suspicious, and peace feels undeserved. The inner critic isn't trying to destroy you. It's trying to keep you alert. But the strategy that once protected you now keeps you trapped, replaying the same judgment long after the threat is gone. No one is born believing they are not enough. That belief is learned. And most often it begins in childhood, not through cruelty, but through conditions. Many people who grow up feeling chronically inadequate were raised in environments where love was inconsistent or performance-based. You were praised when you succeeded, when you behaved well, when you were easy to manage. But when you struggled, became emotional, or simply fell short, the warmth changed. Attention faded. Approval was withheld. Your young mind drew a simple conclusion. Love isn't something I receive, it's something I earn. This doesn't require overt abuse. It can come from emotionally unavailable parents, from caregivers who dismissed feelings with, "You're fine," or "Stop being dramatic," from households where achievement mattered more than emotional presence. When your emotions weren't met with curiosity or comfort, you learned to doubt them. When your needs felt inconvenient, you learned to minimize them. And slowly, you learned to associate closeness with self-erasure. For a child, this adaptation makes sense. Depending on others for survival, you become what the environment rewards. You grow quieter, more capable, more self-sufficient. You try harder not to disappoint. But there is a cost. You don't grow up believing you are lovable as you are. You grow up believing you are lovable when you perform well. That belief follows you into adulthood. It shapes how you work, how you rest, how you choose relationships. Even now, long after the original conditions are gone, your nervous system may still be living by the same rule, working overtime for a love that was never meant to be earned. Even if the belief that you're not enough began in childhood, it rarely stays there. Because the world you grow into often rewards the very pattern that wounded you. From an early age, you're taught to measure yourself through output, grades, titles, productivity, visibility. The question isn't, how are you? It's, what do you do? In many cultures, and especially in American culture, worth is closely tied to achievement. Being busy is praised. Exhaustion is normalized. Rest is treated like something you earn only after you've proven yourself. So if you already learned that love must be earned, this system feels strangely familiar. You don't question it, you adapt to it. You push harder, you stay longer, you try to be exceptional because being average feels dangerous. Not disappointing anyone becomes more important than listening to yourself. And from the outside, this looks like success. People may admire your work ethic. They may rely on you. They may call you driven or disciplined. But internally, the pressure never lifts because the standard keeps moving. No accomplishment feels like a rival, only relief. Temporary relief. And the moment you slow down, guilt takes its place. This is how a private wound becomes socially reinforced. A system that equates worth with productivity doesn't create the belief that you're not enough, but it keeps it alive. It gives your inner critic proof. It tells you that rest is risky and self-compassion is indulgent. So the question stops being, why do I feel this way? And becomes, what kind of world made this feel normal? Understanding this matters because you cannot heal in isolation what is constantly being triggered by your environment. One of the clearest signs of this pattern is something most people never notice in themselves. You live by two completely different standards. When other people struggle, you understand. You give them context, you see their effort, you make room for their humanity. But when you struggle, none of that applies. A friend misses a deadline, and you think, they've been under a lot of pressure. You miss one, and the thought is immediate, I should have managed better. This isn't fairness, it's trauma logic. Somewhere along the way, you learned that compassion was safer to give than to receive, that being understanding toward others created connection, while being gentle with yourself felt risky, even irresponsible. So you became fluent in empathy, but illiterate in self-forgiveness. This double standard is also tied to visibility. You fear being seen at your worst, not because you're incapable, but because being seen once carried consequences. And underneath that fear lives a quieter one. If I stop pushing, who am I without my effort? Achievement becomes more than something you do. It becomes the reason you're allowed to exist without apology. That's why rest feels uncomfortable. Why saying no feels dangerous. Why being average feels like a threat instead of a neutral state. You don't hold yourself to a higher standard because you're disciplined. You do it because at some point, lowering the standard felt like it could cost you love, safety, or belonging. And until this double standard is named, it quietly governs your choices, convincing you that kindness is for others and pressure is what you deserve. To live with the belief that you're not enough is exhausting. So over time, you learn to protect yourself, not by healing the wound, but by covering it. These covers are what we call masks. One of the most common is perfectionism. This isn't about excellence, it's about safety. If everything you produce is flawless, there's less to criticize, less to question, less to reject. So you polish, you over-prepare, you push yourself past what's reasonable, hoping that precision will buy you peace. But perfection never rests, it only raises the bar. Another mask is procrastination. On the surface, it looks like avoidance, but underneath, it's fear. Because trying and falling short would confirm your worst belief. So you wait, you delay, you tell yourself you'll start when you're more ready. Not starting feels safer than trying and proving you're not good enough. And then there's overgiving. You become the listener, the fixer, the dependable one. You give time, energy, emotional labor, often without being asked. Because being needed feels like protection. If others rely on you, they're less likely to leave. Each of these masks once served a purpose. They helped you stay accepted. They helped you avoid pain. But over time, they cost you something. They disconnect you from rest, from spontaneity, from relationships where you don't have to earn your place. The tragedy isn't that you developed these patterns, it's that you were never taught you didn't need them anymore. Here's the part most people never hear, and the part that changes everything. This pattern didn't form because something was wrong with you. It formed because at one point in your life, it kept you safe. When you were younger, being hard on yourself had a purpose. If you anticipated criticism, it hurt less when it came. If you tried to be perfect, you reduced the chances of rejection. If you stayed alert, attentive, and self-controlled, you could avoid making things worse. Your nervous system learned a rule. Self-criticism equals protection. Effort equals acceptance. And it worked, at least then. Children don't have the luxury of questioning their environment. They adapt to it. They become what keeps them connected. So your brain built a strategy around predictability, even if that predictability came with pain. Here's the paradox. The nervous system doesn't choose what's healthiest. It chooses what's familiar. So even now, in moments when nothing is actually at risk, your body reacts as if it is. Rest feels unsafe. Letting your guard down feels reckless. Kindness toward yourself feels undeserved. Not because you're broken, but because your system hasn't updated the file. The strategy that once protected the child is now exhausting the adult, and every time you try to soften, slow down, or stop proving yourself, your brain pulls the emergency brake. Understanding this reframes everything. You're not failing at healing. You're outgrowing a survival pattern that did its job and doesn't know it's no longer needed. And that awareness is the beginning of real change. Healing from the belief that you're not good enough doesn't look dramatic. It doesn't arrive as a sudden surge of confidence or a permanent sense of self-love. More often, it begins quietly, with a shift in how you relate to yourself. The most important separation to make is this. Your worth is not the same as your work. Your value is not measured by how productive you are, how useful you seem, or how well you perform under pressure. Healing starts when you stop trying to prove your worth and begin allowing it. This doesn't mean the inner voice disappears overnight. There will be days when it comes back, telling you to push harder, do more, explain yourself, justify your rest. That doesn't mean you failed. It means your nervous system is learning something new. You begin to notice healing in small, almost ordinary moments. You rest without immediately feeling guilty. You say no without rehearsing an explanation. You choose relationships where you don't have to earn your place. Slowly, the question shifts from, am I doing enough? To, am I allowed to be here as I am? And the answer, though it may take time to feel, is yes. If this video put words to something you've been carrying quietly, you're not alone. This channel is a space where we talk about the unspoken patterns that shape our inner lives. If you'd like to continue this conversation, consider subscribing. And if any part of this resonated with you, leave a comment below, even a few words. Your story matters here. Thank you for watching.